All right. Today, speaker and interviewer that I'm interviewing, it's someone really, really important. Not only he's so handsome that you will love to look at this video, but he's the hot topic at the moment, especially if you're a business owner or if you own property and you need to know what's happening with your insurance. I would love to introduce you today to William Gomez. He is a general insurance broker, and I begged him, can you please answer the 3 hottest questions at the moment so we can give people a little bit of guidance and even just tell them how to behave in this environment. So I'll leave it to you, Will, if you could just please introduce yourself a little bit and then we go from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Pina. Good afternoon, and thank you for having me. Yeah, so just a little bit about myself. So I've managed to become the insurance guy. I think growing up, not that many people want to become the insurance guy, but it's a funny thing. I'm talking to a lot of people in my industry that around, I guess, 90% of people somehow end up falling into insurance. But it's interesting because a lot of people end up, loving the industry, loving how small the industry is and the relationships you create. And I think for me, the biggest thing that has drawn me to the industry has been the problem-solving aspect and the variety. And that really, I guess, comes to the forefront in a crisis like this. Like, you've got hundreds and hundreds of industries, hundreds and hundreds of business owners, all asking a lot of different questions. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. But I guess what I'm going to discuss today is kind of, the 3 main questions that is pretty much on most people's minds. So yeah, I guess.
All right. So I'll think. So I guess one of the boom questions are from business owners that usually all of them, they have insurance, and now they're like, oh, can my business insurance protect me from loss of income caused by these forced government shutdowns or lockdowns and as a result of our COVID-19 pandemic? So how should people behave around that?
Yep. Look, it's a lot of it's just about explanation and setting the expectation. So I guess when it comes to whether COVID-19 does protect your business and your business insurance, a lot of it comes down to, I guess, a lot of people would be asking in respect to the loss of income. So the government has done a forced lockdown. That's impacted a lot of industries, probably a few industries a lot more than it has other industries. So your travel, your entertainment, your restaurants, your cafes have been severely affected. So the biggest question that I get is generally, will the loss of income by the forced lockdowns be covered under my business interruption policy? So unfortunately, the short answer for that is no. The main reason behind that is, yes, a business interruption policy is designed to protect your business in the event that an event occurs that causes you to lose income. However, the way a lot of these policies are designed, pretty much almost all policies have an exclusion on them. And it is a quarantinable disease / highly pathogenic avian influenza style exclusion. So basically, it wipes out the cover. So for, I guess, any event that relates to this kind of cause, the cover won't respond. The cover is still there for other things. So, for example, and this is why we sometimes really have a chat, advise our customers, if they have business interruption already, not to cancel it, because in the event that while your venue is locked down, even though you're not getting any income because of the government forced lockdown, if a fire was to occur and say in a few weeks the ban is lifted and everyone returns to trading again, your cover, because say you had a fire and you can't open until later and you can't take advantage of that upswing when everyone's coming out to try to make up for lost time, then that's when the policy responds to loss of income.
All right. Okay. So let's just hope people don't start putting their shops on fire.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, it is one where I guess it was just just like anything, no one really, the issue doesn't get highlighted until it is raised.
Mm.
And when you look closer at the policies, it's just there's that specific exclusion there that unfortunately wipes out the cover. And that, yeah, it was not the intention of any of the policies to cover this, just because the losses would be so large. Basically, it has so many companies trying to claim on this type of insurance that I think all the insurance companies would go under if they tried to foot the bill on it.
Mm.
I've been keeping up to date with a lot of different articles, but it looks like, I guess, after this thing will be over, there are talks about whether there are ways that the government or organisations can come together to kind of put together a special insurance pool to protect against events like this, just like we have a pool for terrorism. However, that's a bit of work for later down the track.
I see. So I guess the second question, it's related to the first, because if the government forced you to lock down, then kind of it has caused that business partial to complete shutdown. And therefore,
Yep.
for some people, there's either no or really severe reduced income for the next
Yep.
month, that at the moment it's so uncertain. We don't know if it's going to go for a month, 2, 6. So should I cancel my insurance then?
Yep, and that's a very common and very logical and very common question, and one that I'm definitely getting a lot on the daily as well. So I guess as your advisor, I'm always going to strongly encourage you not to cancel your policy. An insurance policy is basically like your safety net. So in these times with things are even tougher, the last thing you want is something to happen and things get even worse. So I guess my advice in respect to that is maybe, I guess, first you consult your other professionals, your accountants, your lawyers to see what other options are available. And as a last resort, look to potentially look at the insurance policy as a way to potentially reduce or obtain some savings by maybe reducing the cover, although we highly do not recommend that. I guess in respect to how I've been approaching that with my clients, a lot of that has been an education piece. So at the end of the day, we can't force anyone not to cancel their policies. However, we can point out, what they're on the hook for if they cancel the policy. So just a bit of an education. So as a business owner, your two biggest exposures come from the protection of your physical assets. So what you own, as well as any legal liability you have to any third parties. For example, your landlords, the neighboring premises, your customers, and the general public. So if we touch on, first of all, your physical assets, the main items are going to be, your contents, your machinery, your stock, and even your vehicles. A lot of times, I guess, business owners have taken finance out on these items. So already, number one, there is an obligation to have insurance there. So usually that's one hurdle. But also, it's also a question for a business owner: how much are you willing to lose? So at the end of the day, these are all your assets. This is, I guess, the funds that you have. If you're willing to lose them, then that's, I guess, a question of where, if you want to reduce the cover, that's a question that you have to ask yourself. This is all I own. Am I ready to lose it, or am I willing to, say, lose part of it if the worst case scenario happens? The second part, probably a bit more important, is your legal liability exposures. So do you know much about this, Tina? Legal liability? I know
I don't.
as a business owner, everyone talks about, everyone asks for your public liability, but why they ask for their public liability? So a lot of people don't really know, but from your your products and public liability, your biggest exposures come from any property damage or personal injury you do to a third party, or if you're selling a product, when you sell a product, in the event that that product malfunctions and damages something or injures someone, that's what this insurance policy protects you against. So if you think about it like that, a lot of times the reason why we're saying not to cancel this policy is because even if you're reduced trading, you're not having that much income, there's not too much business activity, generally there's a premises that you're leasing. So automatically, that's a contractual obligation right there. You might have items stored at that premises. In the event, these are worst case scenarios, but in the event that, say, the government has forced you locked down, you don't have any income, you've stored all your equipment at your premises, and a fire starts, and they determine that the fire started because of one of your items was faulty, or one of your machines in the building was faulty. So it burnt down your landlord's property, and it burnt down neighboring premises. Your legal liability policy is what's going to protect you from all the damage that's caused. Generally, these policies give you around $10 to $20 million of cover, and you pay, sometimes it's in the hundreds, it could be in the thousands if you're a bigger operation, but in return of what you're getting, the protection you're getting for what you're paying, is generally peanuts. So the other part is, if you've got any products that you've sold and they're out there in the public somewhere, if you don't have this policy in place, in the event that someone sues you and says, hey, you know what, your product caused damage to me, if you had cancelled your policy, you're going to have to foot the legal bill and whatever the compensation is going to be for that case. So so in a lot of cases for our clients, it's an educational piece where a lot of the times all they see is, oh no, I've stopped trading, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to be at my premises. But we go through the scenario with them. Okay, where do you have everything kept? Is it on someone else's premises? Have you got products that you've sold and they're out there in the public somewhere? So it's kind of ticking off all those boxes first. And if they are comfortable with that at the end, then it's getting confirmation in writing from them to say, okay, this is what you've instructed me to do, and I've explained all the risks to you, and we can proceed.
Do most business pay monthly or annually for their insurances usually, or it varies business to business?
Yeah, great question. So how we work is every insurance company we deal with all demands annual premiums. So the client has the choice of either they pay the annual premium, so we will go out and quote a price to the client, and that is the annual premium. However, if they want some assistance with cash flow and they do want monthly repayments, we do have access to companies called premium funders. So in a sense, they're kind of like banks. So what they do is they offer short-term loans, which are secured against the length of a policy, which is usually 12 months. And so they offer, I think the rate at the moment is around between 7 to 9%. Over 10 months installment with a small admin fee as well. And all those interest charges that you get off that loan and the admin fee is all tax deductible. So it is quite attractive for a lot of businesses to do the monthly payment. But some do still opt to pay for all of it, so then they can save on the interest charges as well. Yeah. Good question, Tina.
That's all right. I guess we see a lot on TV at the moment, people going, oh, you should talk to your landlord. If you lost your job and you can't afford rent, please talk to your landlord, and don't be a runaway tenant. And there's so many discussions on the internet at the moment about that, because some people think that the landlord is a bad person if they say, I'm sorry, I can't reduce the rent. But then people forget that some landlords are actually retirees that rely on that money to survive as well. They don't have a pension, they live on that. So there's so many things that happen. But as a property owner and a property investor, I know there are
Yep.
certain policies that you need to have in place, and one of them sometimes can protect you from loss of rent. Now, for an investment property, can I protect my rent in case they can't pay the rent, and I'm out of pocket, like in that case?
Yep. So that's an awesome question. Awesome question. Yeah, one of the biggest hot topics at the moment. So that's in respect to it's the landlord's cover, the landlord's insurance is what it's called, and that specific section alludes to the rent default section. So it's that section that covers you for loss of rent to you if your tenant defaults on their rent. So it's a really interesting topic just because it's a very changing situation. So I guess with everything that's gone on, the financial impact that COVID-19 has had on the economy and job losses, has caused a lot of people to obviously lose a lot of income, and potentially a lot of them don't know how to pay rent. So what we're seeing is we don't know, it's early days, so we don't know how it's all starting to pan out at the moment. But one thing it has done is it kind of has had insurers running for the hills, so to speak, in terms of that rent default cover. So before COVID-19, the rent default cover was readily available. Pretty much every single landlord, insurance holder, your Terry Shears, your EBMs, your Amy, pretty much everyone offered rent default protection under the landlord's product, no problem. However, with everything going on at the moment, no one knows what the future is going to look like. This has caused a lot of insurance companies to either one, cancel or stop selling landlord policies altogether, or they still sell landlord's policies, but they don't give you that rent default section. So they kind of likened it to a little bit like, in the bushfire time, if you see the fire coming over the horizon, you can't call up the insurance company if you're in one of the affected areas and say that, you know what, I want to take out building insurance for my property now, just because it's more than likely that it's going to be impacted. So it's what insurance companies call putting on an embargo, just like a trade embargo. It's called a product embargo. So that's what's happening at the moment with rent default, unfortunately. So at the moment, you can't get any more policies, new policies or new covers for rent default. However, the second part of that question is, if you've already got rent default cover, will it respond? So it varies because just like all policies, all insurance companies have different fine prints or different terms and conditions. So some insurance policies actually have some exclusions related to quarantinable diseases that wipe out the cover. Some other insurance policies don't. And then it comes down to, a lot of them have certain conditions on what you have to do as the landlord to try to evict the tenant legally. And if you do that, if you follow those strict procedures, then you're entitled to potentially obtain some loss of rent cover. However, with everything that's going on, one of the really interesting things is, I know last Sunday, the Prime Minister kind of said there was a moratorium on, evicting tenants, and we're still kind of seeing how that's all playing out. So that's going to potentially have some sort of an impact on how the policies respond as well. But yeah, it's a very interesting time. Like, there is a cover there, and if you meet the certain conditions, you can have cover. But at the same time, it's a changing landscape. So it's a definitely must-watch space, and it's definitely what myself and my peers are kind of trying to stay up to date, so we can definitely advise our clients on what is happening.
But for any other reason other than this pandemic, like let's say the tenant left and destroyed your apartment, so you have to renovate,
Yep.
and whatever, like, so all these still, the landlord insurance still applies, like you still can get loss of rent. It's just if people stop paying rent because they lost their job due to this pandemic, then it's when the fine prints kicks in at the moment. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, 100%. So yeah, it's whenever they stop paying for some sort of reason, and the policy would generally outline the reasons of what those conditions would need to be for the policy to respond. In that scenario where you mentioned, someone trashes the place, and then you lose rent because no one can live in there because it's trashed. That's a separate section of the landlord's policy, which is the loss of rent section. So that's still one of the most important parts of the landlord section, which means that if something happens to it, if the property gets physically damaged while it's being repaired, you get covered for your income as well. So that's still there. It's just this other extra section where if for whatever reason they can't pay, but the building's still, intact, nothing's wrong with it. Yeah, and just probably another note to point out in respect to that, if you're a landlord and you renegotiate with a tenant for lower rent to kind of help them out, then there's no real cover under that policy, just because whatever you negotiate with your tenant is considered, a commercial negotiation and falls outside the scope of the policy as well. So that's just something to be aware of as well.
That's very interesting. Now, I know that some people would not know. When someone engages an insurance broker like you, how much do they pay you? Are you expensive?
Definitely not. So, look, at the end of the day, it's all about highlighting what's important to people. What do people value? So, look, there are some products which are a lot more simple to kind of put in place. For example, a lot of people do their car insurance direct. Some people do some of their, their home and contents, their landlords, their small public liabilities direct. And there's no issues with that. Sometimes if it's a vanilla occupation, if you don't mind calling up, dealing with insurance companies when a claim happens, you running with it, then that's fine. However, when you would approach a broker is maybe when things get a little bit more complex, or whether you're a time poor business owner who's kind of just solely focused on what you want to do. You don't want to read the fine print. You just want someone to kind of summarize it all for you and just to say, look, these are your options. I kind of recommend this one for X, Y, Z. And I guess do all that marketing for you, as well as when something goes wrong, when a claim happens, they're the ones who are on the line negotiating with the insurance companies for you, following up. So generally there is a little bit more of a cost involved. I guess in previous times when we compare it, there's not much of a difference. Sometimes it can even become even cheaper, but sometimes it could be a 10 to 20% premium on top of that. But it kind of comes down to what do you value more? Is it, you value your time more, you value the expertise, or did you just want to go for the saving?
I know most of the time we think that we're doing the right thing, and then the cheap costs us a lot of money for the future.
100%. And it's funny because I did have a conversation with I guess a friend the other day, and he was like, "Oh, look, they're going to do whatever they can to get out of this, right?" The insurance company. I go, "No, the insurance companies, they're not designed to get out of paying claims." So generally the main reasons why you hear about horror stories with insurance companies is because someone wasn't explained anything properly, or all they did was they just looked at the price and they said, "Yep, I'm going to go for the cheapest one," and didn't look properly at the fine print, and they missed something. But a lot of the times, we've had clients who've had multi-million-dollar claims, and they did the right thing by getting the right advice, looking through everything. We did all the right calculations for them. So when the time came, we had them adequately covered, and it was a smooth process. And the insurance companies, at the end of the day, they're always going to want to help people. So as long as they can help you to within whatever the contract says, they can help you, then they're always going to do that. That's what we found.
Yeah, and I guess when we are in a moment of stress, that's when we need the insurance. It's usually the time, because if you've done it on your own and you haven't read all the fine print, or if you did read it, you didn't understand it, then when someone from the other end confronts you with those sections, and you're like, oh, I didn't know that, or it was just more about lack of education and the stress, you don't remember that happened. And I guess so, having a person like you uh, on a time of hardship, it just makes that moment a little bit less traumatic, I would say, because you know there's someone there trying to negotiate, and not only that, speaks the same language as the insurance company, so you together can you kind of can deal with that, and then you can translate it to the client in a more friendly manner, so they can understand what's happening. Because some people are very savvy and they understand everything. Some other people are like, oh, I have no idea what you're talking about. Am I wrong? Or yeah.
No, completely correct. Then you just got to think about, like, the world's all about relationships, right? And as brokers, we transact with a lot of our supporting insurers, thousands of times a year. And we've built up, books of business with certain insurance companies. So in times like that, obviously the relationship does count for certain things as well. And, things that maybe you couldn't get over the line if you as a person was talking to someone in a call center, us, because we have a commercial relationship, can sometimes negotiate better terms for yourself as well. So at the end of the day, it's just like anything. It's, who you know, what the connections are. We've got all this business that we put with them, so they'll generally give us more favorable outcomes as well.
I see. All right. Thank you so much, Will, for all your time today. And for the people that are watching, what would be the best way if they had additional questions that they wanted to reach out to you, and I don't know, maybe they want to share with you their current policies, maybe you can help them see some light. What would be the best way to contact you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. More than happy for anyone to reach out, and always more than happy to go through your business with you, just to see what your needs are. So I think the best one for me would be either my LinkedIn, so William Gomez on LinkedIn, and my employer is Scott and Broad Insurance Brokers. And also, I guess best contact also would be my email, williamg@scottbroad.com.au.
All right, I'll put all those down here under the video, and so people can contact you directly and connect with you on LinkedIn. I really appreciate your time today. I really appreciate all the insights. I hope this is not our last conversation. I know you have—
No, definitely not.
And I know you can probably come back again and share not only what's happening in the landlord insurance world, but probably many other types of insurance that people have questions on. We just don't want to talk here for over an hour, because I know you can and we can talk, but let's leave it for our next video. I just want to thank you so much, and thank you for your time.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Pina, and can't wait to come back.
Cool.